Good day, everyone. I couldn't have been more excited than I am today because one, I'm talking about a topic which is very, very close to my heart. And second is I have probably got the best minds to talk about this topic. There hasn't been a more important time than today about dealing with the issues of cybersecurity, financial crime, and cyber attacks. All of us, in some shape or form, have been dealing with digital technologies. The digital technologies have transformed our life. Things which we used to do earlier manually and possibly never did have become real. Things which we only imagined technology or potentially God to do have now become real. Things which I dreamt of and imagined could be a gadget is already a history. So, with that kind of a context where we are living, where our lives are completely connected, our businesses are truly digital, and our ability to conduct commerce on the fly is all real. While all of that provides a great amount of productivity improvement, it provides high degree of convenience. It makes our life very, very easy. It also creates a great opportunity for some of these bad actors who use this to make their bank wallets become richer. And some of you might already know, but financial crime is a very large industry. It no longer those kids who are trying to hack into the bank accounts. It's serious organized criminals who go after our money and sometimes even more serious assets and try to take advantage of some of our vulnerabilities which exist sometimes in our technology and many times in our human emotions and systems. So with that, let me just welcome a great bunch of panelists which I've got today. In no particular order of importance, I just thought I'll start introducing first and foremost Drupad Shah. Drupad is based in Mumbai, and I think he lived most of his life in Mumbai, has spent 24 years with ICICI Bank, and today he has possibly one of the most difficult jobs to do is because he leads the financial crime prevention group for the bank for the last 8 years. Drupad spent most of his learning life going to an engineering college and doing an MBA, and hopefully that has prepared him and last 24 years with the bank to deal with the cyber criminals in a much better way. In his free time, Drupad likes to enjoy old Hindi songs, as you say. I think his definition of old might be different than my definition of old, but we'll talk about that another time. Welcome, Drupad, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Second, I'll move on to Vandana, Vandana Verma Sehgal. Again, Vandana is an amazingly talented personality, and we are all privileged to have her here today. Vandana, for a living, leads the product security business for a company called Snyk, spelled as SNYK, Snyk. And while she's not doing that, she's helping the community become cyber safe. And I'm proud to say that she's one of the first members from the Indian Asian community to join the board of a community called OWASP, Open Web Access Security Protocol or Principles. I don't remember that clearly. I think all of us are only talking about the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities for many, many years. So thank you, Vandana, for joining. And other than doing what she does for the community and the company she works for, she also is a keen learner and also provides learning through gamified models. So thank you, Vandana, for joining us. Third on, I have Rajan. Thank you so much for joining us. And he's got an illustrious career for working with the Reserve Bank of India. I think all of us understand the role Reserve Bank of India has played in the strengthening and protecting of Indian economy. He has nearly 25 years of experience working with the bank. And today, he leads one of the significant part of the Department of Supervision, an area which is the division called Cybersecurity and IT Risk. This is one topic which I think all of us want people like Rajan to deal with every single day because we need the best talent and we need the best capabilities here on that to do. Again, other than doing all the great service he does, he is a big sports person and I believe he'll certainly leave me behind when it comes to marathons. I'll not compete with you on the ground, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Last but not the least, and I kept the my friend Pawan for the last because while everybody here has got, and again, not Vandana, but Drupad and Rajan got 25 years of experience. I, by the way, have 25 years of experience of working with KPMG. I have the 25 years of experience of knowing Pawan. And in those 25 years, I think he's done so many amazing things that it might take long time for me to even just talk about the headline summaries of that. But as a profession, Pawan is possibly, and I'm just saying possibly, the best in the country when it comes to cyber laws and the laws relating to cybersecurity. Pawan is a practicing advocate at the Supreme Court of India. He is also the chair of the International Commission on Cyber Law. Pawan also founded the Cyber Law University, which serves students, several thousand across, I think, every possible country in the world. I was told that there are somewhere around 200 countries in the world, and he has got students in 174 countries around the world. So, Pawan, thank you so much for doing that work, not just for all our citizens, but also citizens of the other countries in the world. And as I was telling you everything interesting about each of our panelists, I have a long list for Pawan, but I will tell you something that Pawan is the only individual on this planet where people who build technology first come to Pawan saying, Pawan, what book are you going to write so that we can build a technology on that? And just for you to know that very recently, some of you would have started playing with the GPT models, the ChatGPT and the GPT-4. Pawan published a book in the month of February on ChatGPT and legalities. And by the way, last week, he also published a book called GPT-4 and the legal issues. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I think go at Amazon and look at it. I'm sure you'll find amazing. So Pawan, I'm mesmerized, not just by your way of articulation, but also the depth with which you articulate those topics in the form of books. So thank you so much. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Akhilesh, for such a warm and such kind words. Thank you.
Perfect. So with that introduction, I think all of our panelists have wealth of experience and expertise. I just thought that I'll kick it off a little bit with the kind of questions I think will be of relevance to all of you. So let me just start with Dhrupad, because I think there's a question which I thought only a banker should be able to answer best. So Dhrupad, in your view, what kind of frauds are taking place when it comes to people getting scammed online? What kind of issues do you see? If you were to talk about what, I'm sure there are many creative ways by which the cyber criminals are going after our wealth and money, but what are some of those common things which the practices the cyber criminals follow and people fall for them? So can you start with some of those examples?
Sure. So one of the things, see, today the fraudsters are actually playing, if you look at it as a triangle, there are three sides. One will be, you will say they'll play out greed. Second, they will play on the sympathy, or they would play on fear. So these are the three pillars broadly on which the fraudsters will today are attacking the innocent customers. So for example, they could call you and say, okay, look, your Aadhaar PAN, for example, linkage is not going to happen if you don't do certain steps. So that is where they will play on threat. And of course, of late, we have seen a large number of people actually getting defrauded on investment scams. See, I mean, people get convinced that they are going to get double their money in, let us say 100 days or whatever it is. So those type of too good to believe offers is what is actually tempting people. Now, around these three people, you could come up with different pretexts. For example, as I said, you could have PAN Aadhaar. Earlier, it was linking a bank account with something. Sometime it was the electricity scam. So the pretext changes. But the underlying to all that is either you will get a call from the fraudster or you will get a link from the fraudster, or where they will ask you to download some stuff. The moment you're downloading something, maybe a malware or a malicious link is actually getting downloaded onto your phones. And then they steal your credentials. They know what you're typing. They know what you're seeing, and so on and so forth. So basically, this is what is actually happening. Pretext changes, but the underlying to that remains the same. So these are some of the things which we are seeing on a regular scale, unfortunately, at our end.
Thank you, Dhrupad. There's some great example. I love the way you said that. Don't be greedy. Don't be too sympathetic. You will definitely fall prey to some of those things. So before I turn to Rajan for what we can do and what banks should do, maybe I'll bring in some examples, Pawan, from your experience. What are the kinds of typical ways and how does it really happen?
Well, typically, we all have to understand that we have entered into a new era of our lives. The golden age of cybercrime has begun with the coming of COVID-19. And these times, it's the trinity of these cybercrimes which are engaging everybody's attention, whether it's phishing, whether it's online financial fraud, or whether it's identity theft. Today, with the Jamtara model of cybercrime being replicated across the country as a cottage industry model, the time has come for people to realize that nothing is safe. The problem is, intrinsically, we as Indians are very trusting. We trust everything that we see, we hear, and we try to rely upon the same. And that's invariably, we find that not only uneducated, but even the most educated of people tend to fall prey to these new cyber criminal activities. Today, the cyber criminal is a lazy guy. He doesn't want to work hard. He wants to go and get the low-hanging fruit. And for that, he's only bothered about taking the money out of your pocket and lo and behold, move on to the next target. With India becoming the most populous nation in the world, we logically become the most fertile targets as far as cyber crimes. 2022, we lost globally more than $6 trillion thanks to this cyber crime. And by the end of 2023, we should be seeing more than $8 trillion losses towards cybercrime. With these kinds of humongous figures that are facing us, what one has realized is that the legal frameworks are pretty much out in the woods. We haven't not been able to make our legal frameworks effective so as to provide effective remedies to people who lose their money. Now, most of the time when you lose your money, you're not bothered about going after the guy. You're only bothered about getting your money back. But there also is a huge challenge because the 6th July 2017 notification of the Reserve Bank of India is one particular notification which talks about your zero liability. But that's a notification that's extremely hard to get implemented through banks because banks try to find one way or the other to defeat the very process of giving claims to you. The law enforcement agencies are 20 steps ahead behind these law enforcement, the current group of cyber criminals. And I think a lot of work needs to be done. So the focus ultimately has to be on a variety of elements. Number one, as Indians, we need to get cyber resilience as an integral component of our mindsets. Number two, we have to inculcate cyber security as a way of life. Number three, it's time that we should not be dependent on the state for protecting my cyber security. I'll have to be studiously careful on how I'm going to be sharing information. This, despite the fact that India is already now seeing the great Indian vomiting revolution, where Indians are vomiting data about their personal, professional, social lives on the internet without even thinking about the ramifications. And ultimately, it's all about due care, due diligence, and caution. For that, capacity building and appropriate sensitization will have to be the only mantras. Otherwise, we as a nation will continue to keep on bleeding by these constant cyber criminal scams that are being hit to the nation at large.
That was moving, and the great Indian vomiting revolution. I think that's going to stay with me for some time. I think that's something which I've learned new today. Thank you, Pawan, for alerting us for the kinds of crime and the kind of challenges which we face. Let me turn to Rajan, and because you have the job of making sure that the banks do what they are expected to do when it comes to the investor protection and some of those areas. So, what's your view in terms of what are some of these best practices which people can adopt, and what are the things which the banks should do to make sure that their consumers remain protected?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, first of all. So let me give my perspective. I basically wanted to mention two specific aspects. One is, as you know, Reserve Bank as the regulator and the supervisor of the banking system has a responsibility of ensuring that the banking system is safe and the public retains a trust in the banking system at all points of time. So which essentially means that, first of all, the banking system itself should be resilient against cyber risk. Cyber risk is relatively of recent origin as far as banks are concerned. As you know, the traditional risks in banking are the credit and market risk. And we had an operational risk. A lot of things are coming under operational, but cyber risk under operational is the relatively recent origin. So we have in the Reserve Bank, this particular division, which I'm heading, came into being probably sometime in 2015-16, recognizing cyber risk as an important risk in banking and the financial sector. And we have grown from that to a fairly sizable, resilient group over the last 5-6 years. So I must say, there are two things we do basically broadly. One is we issue regulations to banks to ensure that they remain resilient at all points of time. And incidentally, it is not just about cyber risk. And the way you started the talk is with the all-pervasive digitalization, the economy. Everybody's dependent on banks, right? And nobody goes to branch these days. Everybody does his transactions on account of various reasons. It could be simple IT-related issues, could be software-related issues, any other issue. Those also needs to be taken care of, that so that citizens are able to enjoy digital services on a 24/7 basis as much as possible. So this is an equally important task, along with ensuring that the banks are cyber resilient. So that's one point I just want to mention. So one is the regulatory part, which we issue a set of regulations, which is updated periodically. The other is supervisory aspect, which we actually go and ensure that the banks implement what they're expected to do through various tools. If we have time, we can explain all that. So I must say today, 5-6 years since we have started this journey, I must say today, the banks in India, I'm talking the commercial bank, if you look at 6 years back and now, they're much, much more cyber resilient. The cyber security posture of banking is much, much better and stronger than it was 5-6 years ago. That doesn't mean that everything is all right. There is nothing like 100% cyber resilience anywhere in the world, in any sector. So that also is showing up in my view. Earlier, you had some of the high-profile hacks into banks. The Swift incident in Bangladesh Bank is an example of what can go wrong if a cyber criminal or set of criminals breaks into a bank and takes money out, the impact it can have on the public trust. That is, by and large, that really is not happening these days, touch wood. So Pawan talked about the low-hanging fruit. So if you're not able to, if it is difficult to break into a bank, then what is the next best thing is to break into an individual who is much more vulnerable. So the low-hanging fruit. So you break into an individual, you use social engineering and other techniques, and then steal money. So basically stealing credentials through phishing and other means talked about. But there also we are so although there may not be an element of banks' involvement, the banks can say their mind systems are safe, but the individual has part of his credentials. But that doesn't give me any comfort. At the end of the day, whether there is a weakness at the bank's end or the customer's end, if the customer has to retain his trust in the banking system, in digital transaction, there has to be a control on the frauds happening, even at the customer's end. So our objective is also to see to it that the customers are also safeguarded, and we can explain, if time permits, how we do that through various of regulations, which also kind of helps customers. Apart from the awareness part is important, of course, but it takes time. And if you look at many of the social engineering techniques, any of us can fall prey. Some of those are so sophisticated. I would always say it only requires a moment's lapse in concentration for any of us to get caught in any of those. So, but a lot of efforts being taken to safeguard the customer, not just the banks. So that is in short that we are doing. It's a journey. A lot of work remains to be done. This is a very dynamic area. There is no static thing. It's the criminals, as Pawan is saying, they're always a step ahead. I must say that, whether it is regulation, supervision, police, or anybody, we are only catching up. It's a catch-up. Unlike in other areas, we look at traditional risk and credit market risk. We know these are all relatively static. That's not the case with but that doesn't mean that we are not being effective. I guess all of us, not just India, we're doing a lot of work along with the regulated entities to ensure that the banking system is safe. And by the way, I just want to say that while the digital transactions have grown by leaps and bounds, so are cyber frauds. But if you look at the retail digital transactions and the number of fraudulent transactions, either in terms of volume or value, we have one of the lowest in the world. But that doesn't mean that we should rest on it. In a country like ours, somebody losing his life savings, even if one person, that does count for us. But just to say that we really have one of the lowest cyber frauds in digital transactions in the world, considering the volume of transactions, which I think I would stop at this point of time. And thanks.
That was absolutely fascinating in terms of, I get two emotions when I hear what you say. One is that I'm a lot more comforted, a lot more hopeful, because as you said that, the cyber resilience of the Indian banking system is much better than where it was. So we are all very proud of some of the regulatory framework which we have in the country. I do think as a global citizen, I'm proud of what some of those things which you've done, especially providing two-factor authentication for transactions, having the SMS back for every banking transactions. I think we are definitely ahead of the curve on many of those things. But at the same time, I think the caution which you give to all of us is that it's at a moment when you could potentially have that lapse, and that could happen to every one of us, including the most alerted, most educated, and most aware people. So I think nobody is untouched from this one. So I think we be careful. Let me quickly turn to Vandana. And Vandana, you build products and you build security in the products. Tell us some of these best practices from the users who use mobile devices and web browsers and all that. So what are a few things which the end users can do to remain more protected than otherwise?
Sure. Now, while we talk about these technologies and ever-changing technologies, because we want to have any device and every device which is there in the market. So what it gets is that there are a lot of challenges that comes along with it. With anything that has a lot of new things, obviously, we don't understand everything. So it comes with its own pace, and the attackers are trying to make sure that even a common person who's using it gets prey to that. So first and foremost is, I would say any person should do is making sure that their software is up to date, their phone, their device, or an iPad, or anything that they have, that should be up to date, because attackers often target these simple systems, some softwares which can be easy to exploit, where there are vulnerabilities, where people are not updating it. I can see my friends also, they say, oh, there's a software update, I will update. But this is not how it works. So if you get an update for anyone and everyone, even for our elderly people, our kids, who have devices, especially when we talk about pandemic, everyone had classes and everything on the devices. So keeping the software up to date is the first and foremost thing. And while we talk about passwords, I feel that they're very close to anyone. We all have multiples and I would say tons of passwords that we deal with these days. So with passwords, I have an analogy where they should be treated as toothbrushes. So toothbrushes actually are personal hygiene. When we do not share toothbrush, why should we share passwords? They're very unique to us. Even our close friend can be an enemy to us. So be very, very cautious, especially while we talk about India. We're very close to our peers and friends and who not. We share a lot of information. On social media, we share a lot of information. So anyone can try and guess those passwords. So we need to make sure we don't keep our friends, our dogs, or family names as passwords. Very, very important. Then we were talking about two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. Sometimes that can be hard. Sometimes that's not very easy, comes easy, but that also provides a lot of security for us. Even if somebody gets to know our passwords, guesses our passwords, do shoulder surfing, like my kid, I need to change my password every few weeks because my kid peeps into my phone and gets to know what my password is, or just randomly check it. So it's easy. So we need to be very cautious with that. Another thing is, actually, we deal with a lot of messages, a lot of information. We have a lot of input and output, or I would say information which is flowing from towards us and going from us. So we need to be very cautious on what we click on or what we spread. There are a lot of links which can actually download malicious content, or the content which is not good for our phones or our devices, or which can send data to some places which it should not go. So we need to be very cautious of those links. If we do not know the person, do not link it. Or if we feel that this could be a problem, or we might have clicked, but do not provide the information. For example, your first name, last name, or your email addresses, or your credit card information. There have been a lot of credit card frauds in the past, right? Now we have multi-factor authentication. We have a lot of security from the banks. But common people still tend to do these mistakes, like transfer money via UPI to people we trust. Like people are making fake Facebook accounts or fake Insta accounts, and they're saying that, can you please transfer me the money? So be very cautious with that. Another thing is, let's educate ourselves. Government is trying hard to make sure that people are educated. There are a lot of information. There's a lot of information which is provided by Indian CERT team as well. So let's get actually informed with those resources. And I know it's not easy for the common people to get educated, but then probably I've seen that a lot of videos are floating around on social media as well. So let's get educated from these videos, but then at the same time, be very cautious on reporting these frauds. Like when we report these frauds to CyberCell, there are a lot of fake numbers which are available. So be very cautious on going to the right cybercrime site. So that's bits and pieces from my side, but be very cautious about what you see and what you click on.
Thank you, Vandana. Those were some of these very simple yet effective ways for us to protect ourselves on these online frauds. So let me turn to Pawan. Pawan, we have all heard that some of these things are inevitable. Things go wrong, even with the best of the minds. They will fall prey sometimes because the attack patterns are so sophisticated, and we are all distracted with the overload of information. So things can go wrong. What are the kind of legal recourses available, and what would be your advice to common men or common women to actually go and do in these kind of situations? What would be your advice?
First things first, there's a normal misconception that the law has nothing for you. That conception needs to go away. There are effective remedies that are available to you should you become a victim of a cyber fraud or a cyber crime. Number one, first thing first, never be silent. Always report. The time is gone where non-reporting has to be the mantra of the day. Why? Today, everybody is under attack. So if you report, that's the best way to serve your own self and that of your fellow countrymen. Now, you can report online to the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal, which is at cybercrime.gov.in. You want to report to a National Cybercrime Helpline, please dial 1930, which is the governmental helpline, which is connected and manned directly by law enforcement agencies who got tie-ups with the banks, so that in the event they get information from you and the money is still in the banking pipeline, they will ensure that they freeze the money and the money is saved back for you. But that's one option. Second is that if you find that you become a victim of this cybercrime aspect, you can also file a cybercrime complaint at your state police website. A lot of websites allow you to lodge an online FIR. You can do that. If you know the identity of the person who's done it, you can technically seek damages by way of compensation up to 5 crore rupees under Section 43 of the Information Technology Act 2000. In any case, any kind of a cyber fraud which tantamounts to you losing money are distinct cyber crimes and cyber and computer-related offenses under Section 66 and 43 of the IT Act, despite being other offenses like cheating and online frauds under Section 420 and even on 465, 468 of the Indian Penal Code. At the end of the day, you have to realize that these are activities where electronic information gets forged to win your trust and therefore go ahead and push you in the direction where you can actually lose money. So reporting to cybercrime is a great priority. If you know the real identity, it's even better priority. Even if you don't know the identity of the person defrauding you, if you know the bank concerned, you can write to the grievance officer of the bank and ask for going ahead and the reimbursement of the money. The Reserve Bank of India has been dedicatedly working towards consumer protection. They have come up with a notification of 6th of July, 2017, which says that if an unauthorized transaction has been done into your credit or debit card number, then you all need to do is to only report within the first 72 hours in writing to the concerned bank or credit card company, and the entire amount of money so gone will have to be put back into your account by the concerned bank. Now, that's a great step forward because it's ultimately aimed at more consumer protection. But all that will only help if you are aware, if you are alive to the fact that you need to act. A majority of Indians say, well, it's only 10,000, 20,000 rupees, not worth the effort. What will the society say? the social stigma reigns very large on our minds. I think the time has come where we all have to realize that everybody is under attack. So being quiet is nothing but actually giving an encouragement to going ahead to the cyber criminal to go and perpetuate his criminal actions with impunity. So report, take care of your appropriate remedies. And even under the IT Act, any service provider as an intermediary can always be written to in the form of a grievance under the grievance redressal mechanism under the IT Rules 2021. And in case if your grievance is not appropriately addressed, then you can go to the grievance appellate committee for the redressal of your grievances. So a number of effective remedies are there. Of course, the law needs to be constantly updated because now cybercrime as a service has arrived. But more significantly, the latest kid on the block is cybercrime as a service powered by artificial intelligence. So when AI is going to be used from the darknet to target you and your monies, you effectively are going to find yourself at pretty much of a kind of a sticky situation. Therefore, the better step will be, let's learn to be stingy in sharing our information. Let's not share our information. Let's not click unnecessarily on links. And let's try to adopt cybersecurity as part of our day-to-day culture.
Thank you, Pawan. I think that's possibly the most comprehensive thing I've heard on the topic of the legal recourses available, legal remedies. But I think to me, the biggest thing is report and don't stay silent. At the same time, educate yourself, because if you don't, then you won't be able to benefit from any of those. So with that, let me turn to Drupad once again. And I know bank is always trying to be a few steps ahead of the criminals. And it's not just you who come into the equation. It's, as we've all been hearing, the social engineering attacks which happen on the large base of consumers who may have very different level of awareness. So what are some of the things that the bank is doing to protect the interest of the consumers in general?
See, I'll start off where Pawan ended. Basically, you spoke about the point on educating oneself. So actually, banks play a very important role in also educating the customers. So it could be through awareness, and then awareness could be either through videos, emails, etc. Also, what we need to look at is from the bank side, while education is one aspect of this entire thing, the fraud management system of the bank also has to be robust. Earlier, it was a question of only that you monitor the transactions and ensure that they are not fraudulent. Now, I think we need to move a step ahead and see, can we do something while before the transaction happens, so that we can then break the chain which or the connect which the fraudster is building with the customer. So the moment we can interject over there, I'm sure the number of frauds will drop. So one of the things which we are trying to do, and again, to that extent, we have to thank RBI, is we are now going to put in behavioral systems over there. How does the person operate his device or a computer? What is the pattern in which he actually does the fund transfer in normal course? And now how is the fraudster doing it? How much pressure he puts on a particular key when he's doing the typing, etc. So those are some of the softwares or tools which I think every bank will now have to put in place, because the customer honestly is the weakest and the strongest link in this entire chain of frauds. So that is something which we would focus on. Secondly, is the banks also have to ensure that the channels which we are giving to the customers are secure. Customers should have faith that the channels through which they are doing the transactions is absolutely 100% safe. And it is only when that is there, then the UEBT circular, which Pawan also spoke to and Rajan sir also spoke about, is actually going to come into play. Then the customer will, when she speaks up, or when she speaks up about the fraud, she knows that he will probably get his funds back. The other thing which we should look at is now 1930 is something which is an excellent initiative which has been taken by the Ministry of Home Affairs, which every bank is now using. In fact, we are in touch with the Ministry of Home Affairs to see that how we can get access to that data. See, today it has been a one-way traffic in the sense that they are sending requests and we would submit. But I think there is it's a treasure trove which they are sitting on. We should actually see how to actually mine that data such that we can prevent these fraudsters from opening accounts with the bank. See, because we have to make life difficult for the fraudsters. Otherwise, they are just hopping bank to bank and they are opening accounts. Also, other thing which we need, and this actually as a banking fraternity, is we all banks need to collaborate with each other. in terms of information sharing. If funds are identified, we have to figure out ways how to ensure that the funds don't go out of the banking system. The problem is the fraudsters, once they encash that, then it becomes difficult. But as long as they are there, the funds are in the banking system, they are still invested, they will keep trying. And that is the time when we can work with the police to actually try and grab those culprits. I think only reporting to the police probably is not sufficient. Banks need to do a lot more to work with the law enforcement to get the convictions. See, today the customer to the crime we are seeing, but now we need to do it. We need to get these people arrested. And that is where I think as a banks, with Mr. Pawan's help, we need to actually work with police to get these people behind bars. That is the deterrent which these people will actually have. So I think these are some of the steps which actually we are working quite aggressively with the police as well.
Yeah, so that's a great thing. Good to hear that the behavior analytics is going to come into play so that you can still figure out more details than just the password and keystroke which you get. Turning to Rajan again, you actually gave us some good pointers in terms of what the banking system is doing. What are some of those technological advances already you have implemented? Give us a little bit more depth on what's coming up in the future as to what are the other kinds of methods and techniques and technologies which both the banking system as well as the consumers should and could adopt, because I think you have a lot of depth on this topic. So I would be happy to hear your views, sir.
Yeah. So let me first of all say that I think Vandana talked upon this cyber hygiene. I think most of the things he talks about the cyber hygiene. Of course, all these things are in place. We can always tell the banks, we've been telling them, and it's all part of the regulations. You keep your systems up to date. You patch your systems properly. You have multi-factor authentication. You take care of the privileged access people. You have whole sorts of security solutions, SOC, DAM, all of them. But when it comes to the individual, in our country, it is very unrealistic to ask an individual or expect an individual, for example, to update his operating system. Many people don't know what an operating system is. It's very difficult. It's not on. So, in our view, the security works best when it is under the hood. If you're trying to be overly secure in your products and services, either two things happens. Either those products, they lose traction, or you try to get around the security, so the very purpose is defeated. So it's a very difficult call to security versus convenience. And I just would like to say some of the things we've done and some of the things we're doing to a specific question. And to ensure that even if the customer, there is a compromise at the customer's end without his knowledge, and we are assuming that these systems or the methodologies are so sophisticated, you can't expect the customer to be so very well aware all the time. So we have come out with this digital payment security controls, a master direction in February 2021. And a lot of that is aimed at ensuring there are enough roadblocks along the way that even if the customer is compromised, and this is very important, you have enough roadblocks on the way that the fraudster will find it very difficult to take the money out. So one is this concept of device binding. It's already there in UPI today. All your mobile applications with banks, the device binding is mandatory. So that is one aspect which we are told. Second is we're told banks you have to phase out your older version of your mobile applications. Like you should have only one version. Okay, and there is a phase out time which is given for early version can be 3 months, 6 months, so that customer is not inconvenienced. The third could be that when you install a mobile application, if there is for example, a remote access application already installed on his mobile, right? I see some of the frauds happen through somebody accessing your mobile from elsewhere. So either you are not allowed to go ahead with the installation of the application, or you give an alert, look, this application is unsafe. You better take a call on taking it out of the system. The fourth could be that if you're trying to make a transaction through a public Wi-Fi, a potentially unsafe kind of network, then you're alerted. of things. So the idea is to ensure that the customer is protected without assuming that he knows a lot of, he is sophisticated enough to know all that. That is the whole idea. And on top of it, Pawan had talked about the fraud risk management system, and we have placed a lot of emphasis. If everything is broken, and everything is broken true, in 2016 itself, we have advised banks to put in place appropriate fraud risk management system solutions in place. And today, all the banks have it in place. Now, today, the focus is the efficacy of these systems. As Mr. Drupal has mentioned, it is not enough to have a solution in place. A lot of work needs to be done. You need to build in the rules. You need to tweak the rules. You have to change the rules, add the rules. You learn all the time. So, for example, as mentioned, if a customer is generally doing this transaction during daytime, and you suddenly find transactions at night, so that's something that there has to be alert. So we look at the efficacy of the FRM. This is an area where it's a focus for the Reserve Bank today when our people go there. Whether the alerts being generated, if yes, they have been acted upon. So those, whether these alerts, the rules are being constantly being revised so as to ensure that these systems become more and more efficient. That is one aspect. Going forward, simultaneously, we're also talking to people like the OS provider, for example, Google. Most of our phones are Android phones, 85, might be 90% phones are Android. We're specifically talking to Google, for example, and others also on specific OS level solution to some of the problems. For example, we wanted the OTPs, which the customer receives, is going to a folder which nobody else can access. So a remote application can't access, shouldn't be able to access the OTPs, for example. Or oftentimes the customer is, tricked into parting with the OTP. He gets a phone call, he asks to share the OTP. So if he's on call, he should not be able to access the OTP. So even without the customer not knowing, he will not be able to do these kinds of things. The SMS forwarding application is another vulnerability. So SMS forwarding application won't be able to access the OTP. So these are the things on which we have made a lot of headway with Google and the others. And hopefully we'll see some of these things implemented going forward. So as we are assuming, the point I'm trying to say, we are assuming that the customer is not so sophisticated. And that's indeed the case today. And without the customer's involvement, we're putting enough roadblocks so that the customer is safe. So this is one thing, the message which I wanted to give. We are really working on all fronts to ensure that the customer, of course, is protected. And Pawan talked about the limited liability circular. And we have the ombudsman scheme. I think is pretty effective. If a banker is not agreeing to the request of customer under the scheme, he can approach the ombudsman. He will take a view on what is required to be done, and there's a lot of relief obtained to the customers based on this particular scheme. Has been very effective. Of course, on the awareness front, a lot of things are happening by the Reserve Bank, by the commercial bank, by the government. There is a whole host of initiatives that is happening to make the customer aware. I think this is what I just wanted to convey at this point. Yeah.
That's quite. I think you're fortunate to have those kinds of forward-looking thinking. So, working with the mobile companies and people who build operating systems to talk about and build those capabilities, which even if the user fails to detect some of those frauds, we are able to protect them with the kind of technological features which we build. I do know that there are many questions in my mind and possibly in the minds of the viewers who are watching this segment, but we may run out of time. So let me quickly turn a little bit to what everybody has been talking about these days, the impact of generative AI. We have seen a lot. I know AI is a topic which I studied when I went to university, and things have changed quite a lot since then. And the fascinating UI on top of a GPT model has changed the world of our understanding of AI. So let me turn to Vandana. Vandana, what do you think the impact of large language models like ChatGPT or GPT-4 and others on the banking fraud? What could it mean for all of us?
While I talk about ChatGPT, its implications, Pawan sir has already written a book around it, and people are talking about whether it's helpful or not. Especially if I talk from a banking perspective, now ChatGPT is good. okay, it's helping out. Regenerative AI is helping in shaping up what we see in the future. But at the same time, it does make mistakes. There was one case where there was a recent incident that there was a person who was using a code which was generated by AI. Now, we have great responsibility, but at the same time, we have to use it very responsibly. Because if we do not take these technologies in a proper way, then they can be a problem. There can be problems with that. Now, while we talk about data is the new oil, if it's spilled, it cannot be collected back. Similarly, especially with banking, there are so many things that banks from RBI to those local banks, everyone is trying to make sure the users are secure. And even Rajan sir has mentioned that there are a lot of things which are being done with the organizations as well. Now, what can be done is that while we use these newer technologies, we use it very carefully. While we integrate it into our systems, we vet what it is generating. It is going to be fine, but then at the same time, we need to be very cautious with that. Now, you don't know what data is being saved, what data is being collected or shared where. We're still underway in understanding these. Microsoft is working with ChatGPT, then we have Bard with Google, and many more of these technologies. So we need to be cautious. Now, for me, as a common person who wants to play around with technology, it might be fine. But while I integrate with the bigger systems, then at that point of time, I need to have those checks. I need to have those balances. If I talk from a technical perspective, then I would say that especially for banks, it becomes even more important to keep a check for these code level things, which comes from the developers who are actually working towards banking systems. So that's my perspective on that.
Thank you, Vandana. If anybody wants to go or take a go on this one, because I'm seeing the potential for phishing attacks to become more sophisticated. Because in the past we have only seen, dumb machines writing phishing messages, sometimes the bad English by the attackers. But now with the generative AI and its ability to have context-aware conversations, I do believe that the phishing attacks will get more sophisticated. And therefore, it's all the more important for us as the individuals who are dealing with our hard-earned money, which is staying in those digital systems, to be more protected. But I think this is an area which is evolving as we go.
Let me come in here.
Yeah.
I think, Akhilesh, the fact remains is that ChatGPT comes in as a tool that cyber criminals have been waiting for long. And now, look, ChatGPT has already been used for creating the world's first malware, which cannot be identified by current anti-malware products. You're now going to find more new innovative ways of misuse of financial institutions and financial instruments by ChatGPT. Well, GPT-4 has tried to curb in the misuse of the criminal aspects of this particular algorithm. But the fact still remains is that because ChatGPT is available for free for cyber criminals, I was on the darknet the other day, and they were actually, one of the websites were actually offering a service of new innovative cybercrime models using ChatGPT. So I think cyber criminals are going to obviously have a great blast and a great party. For that, stakeholders in the financial and the banking ecosystem have to take double precautions, because right now we have already been struggling how to map the particular cyber acts to particular cyber actors. But once these cyber frauds are going to get perpetuated by artificial intelligence algorithms, not only will their detection and attribution be virtually impossible, but more significantly, we will be far more vulnerable. So the idea is we'll all have to join hands towards making our finances, our monies, and our financial institutions far more secure than what they currently are. Thanks.
Thank you.
I would just like to slightly take it differently. I mean,
Yes.
While the fraudsters are going to use the ChatGPT to commit the frauds, I think equally the banks will also have to use this to figure out how to integrate this and utilize it much more effectively in our fraud monitoring systems. See, because finally it's a humongous amount of data which we have. The good side of this is we might be able to crunch the analysis time much faster. See, because if we don't do that, as it is, we are almost 20 steps behind with the fraudsters. We'll probably land up 100 meters behind. So it's essential for us that we also adapt it and try to see how we can utilize this and integrate it with our fraud monitoring systems.
That's a great thought, Drupad. I think we all need to see all of these technologies for its great usage to protect, than to just only look at what could go wrong. But yeah, I think we have to be mindful on the criminals sometimes can be more creative and more irresponsible for doing this. As I mentioned that, I've got many questions, but I'm very conscious of time. And I think all of us need to also balance with the sharing of information and the time we have available at hand. So what I would like to do is that I would like to go around the room and ask you for one final advice and try and wrap it up based on what I hear. I know we've already heard enough from all of you to talk about how should users remain more aware, how should we focus on devices being patched and updated all the time, how should we use password as a hygiene. But I still think that in the world of digital convenience, there is always a challenge to say how much do I want to do to protect versus how much I want to kind of kill the friction. It's a trade-off which I'm sure all the financial institutions have to deal with every single time. So in that context, I keep talking to people and say, while I should be remembering all my password and I shouldn't be writing them down anywhere, but I have to now deal with 40 to 45 passwords from different systems all the time. So how is it really practical for us to kind of remember so many passwords and change them every 45 days? It's a nightmare. So how does it feel to actually say, can I use a password manager and write down all my passwords and have one master password? So questions like that which come to me sometimes. A question like this saying, hey, I have to get so many OTPs which come up on my phone, but there's a nice OTP grabbing program which can actually just do my screen grab and put the OTP, saves me the convenience of putting it all the time. What's wrong with that? Or somebody would say, why should I be typing my long 16-digit or 13-digit credit card number every time I just save it? And, so all kinds of these convenient ways of digital, I would say, financial transaction people do. And technology is making it easier for the humans. So I just want to go around the room, maybe starting with Drupad first, saying, what is your advice when people try to balance this type of convenience versus the protection they should be looking forward to?
See, it's a very tricky one because there is always the question between convenience and security, which you will need to manage. See, somewhere we as bankers and industry as a whole will also have to tell the customer that it's your hard-earned money. I mean, you will have to be careful. Just like you lock your home when you are doing, you might have 2 locks or 3 locks or whatever it is. But the fact is, it's like that. You are keeping the money. You need to also play safe. At the same time, as a banker, we will have to do the extra steps, as Rajan sir already said. And he's right, because every customer is not supposed to be intelligent. You have to assume that the customer will compromise at times because some of the frauds are so sophisticated. Forget customer, even as a head of the department, I know I will fall prey to that. So that is going to happen. We need to ensure that somewhere we come up with mechanisms to protect the customers. I think that should be paramount. So at some times, if it so happens that there is a little bit of inconvenience which is caused to the customer because of some security measures, yes, we will have to explain, but we will have to implement. We cannot always be the good boys over there. But at the same time, we should not choke up his bandwidth or the customer's bandwidth so that they are pushed away from the system. So that balance we'll always have to do. And some of the basic hygiene factors which Vandana already spoke about, not sharing passwords, not writing them down, not using airport Wi-Fi's, for example, to do financial transactions, etc. I think these are some of the basic hygiene factors which we will always have to keep educating the customers on. See, the unfortunate part is still that customer is impacted. They feel it will not happen to me. It is not happened to me till now. I am protected. But that is not true. At some point, most of us are getting duped. So this is a fight which we'll have to keep doing and ensuring that we keep balancing the security and the convenience aspects.
That's a very good response. Thank you, Drupad. Rajan, what's your take on how do we balance this convenience and protection? You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, sorry, it's a tough act to follow, and we've been at the receiving end all the time. Because if you go with too much of security, the people complain. But if people lose money, then also you get income. That's fine. That's part of the job. So I recognize it. No, I just wanted through this program, just wanted to say 2-3 things which is happening. One is there is a great deal of cooperation today happening. I've never seen this before between the government agencies, which is the Ministry of Home, the Ministry of Finance, the Reserve Bank, the TRAI, the police. We meet all the time, regularly. I mean, there is a regular interaction where they exchange notes. We plan, learn from each other, see what each of us has to do, track it. I think this is something which is very, very good in my view, because it never happened to this extent before. I think Pawan talked about the cybercrime reporting portal. I mean, that's a very effective portal, but we are also aware of the fact that we have a long way to go. The speed at which the money goes, the flows through the system, and we need to stop the money from going out of the banking system. And this happens in a matter of, unless you have technology to intervene, it doesn't really happen, because by the time the customer puts in the complaint, the money would have already gone out of the bank. But once the customer makes a complaint, how fast you can go through the trail of the money and stop the money in the tracks makes all the difference. And we are trying to make technology work in this, and we will probably see a much, much, much more efficient way of doing it going forward. So this is one aspect you wanted to say. Second, we are also in coordination with banks, a lot of things to make the banking system itself safe. For example, we talked about phishing. I mean, it is not only the customers who fall prey to phishing, and even the bank officials can fall prey to phishing, and it can be disastrous. I mean, you click on a mail with an attachment which has a malicious payload. It gets into a system of a bank. It can travel laterally, and if the system's not good enough, it can establish a command and control connection with the command and control. It can harvest your credentials, and you can create attacks. So we, for example, we also do phishing simulation exercise just to see how good the bankers' customers are, how good their systems are in looking at certain types of mails like domain spoofing or a display spoofing kind of mail. We have systems of cyber reconnaissance and outside-in approach. Look at banks' system outside and see what are the known vulnerabilities there. What are the banks doing about it? We have this. One of the things we're going to do. This is something which we have going to have a cyber range. What is it? Something like the war games in the defense, where we simulate cyber attacks and see how and learn from one another, and how good we are and what kinds of responses. We're going to have a cyber range in place, possibly by the end of the year, where we get a much better understanding of the cybersecurity posture of the entities. And the last point I want to say is 2022 was, I suppose, year of ransomware attacks. And 2023, as we see now, also is going to be a year of ransomware attacks. It is, I must say with a little bit of satisfaction, so also risky to say, you're not really seeing a very, very severe ransomware attack in the banking system today. To me, it is touchwood. It's a testimony, in my view, of the strides to the banking system generally has taken, that we really not really found a big such attack in the banking sector today. And even if it happens, we have plans in place so the business continuity is maintained. There's another focus area for us. So I just would like to say that a lot of efforts are being taken, and specifically not going to tell about or pontificate as to what the customer should do and customer should not do, because I'm always aware of that customer residing in a village who probably has really no awareness of these things, and you don't expect him to do, and we have to address them. So all that we're doing is to ensure that the customer, the last mile, is safe to the extent that we can. Yeah, and this is going to be a continued exercise. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really continuing and evolving journey. Thank you so much. Pawan, quick words from you about what's the best strategy to balance?
Well, we have to realize that today we are in a very distinctive new age. The new cyber world order has arrived. In this new cyber world order, two lifelong companions for us for the rest of our lives will be growing cybercrime and increasing cybersecurity breaches. Therefore, expecting absolute security in this utopian world may not exist. Let's realize that cybersecurity is a constantly moving target. What was secure yesterday is not secure today, and what's secure today will definitely not be secure tomorrow. The time has come where we must start inculcating a sense of distrust and mistrust in our mindsets. Let's learn to distrust and mistrust any information till such time we are able to independently verify or authenticate the same. And as Swami Vivekananda says, Utishthit Jagrat Prapya Varani Bodhat. Arise, awake, and stop not till your goal is achieved. The time has come for all Indians to wake up from the deep slumber, to start inculcating and wearing a good fire suit, because the internet is a big firewall, and we are all dealing with this firewall on a day-to-day basis. It's our own selfish interest that we try to keep our own data secure. Let's do more tapasya. Let's do an additional step forward in terms of securing our monies. But let's not trust the uncertain elements, because they are surely going to rob us of whatever limited resources or monies that we'll have. So therefore, constant vigil will have to be your only mantra as you go forward to protect yourselves, your monies, your data, and your digital present and digital reputations.
That's outstanding. I think you did my job, Pawan, better than I would have ever done. But I think this is really the conclusion for what we're talking today on. It's never-ending journey, and we got to do more. Vandana, your quick words before I close.
Yeah, I would just say most of the things have been said by my fellow speakers. I would just say that ask for help. That's very, very important. If something goes wrong, it can go wrong anywhere. Asking for help is one important thing for anyone and everyone, where if something goes wrong and we ask for some help where people can provide us the information, I think that suffices that, yes, we can deal with cyber attacks. Cyber attacks are here to stay. They're not going to go away so soon, because everyone is becoming so creative. There are so many things happening. We are dealing with newer technologies. People cannot deal with everything, not know everything, especially have like a lot of people around. So I would just say,
Vandana, you're on mute.
So can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
I was just saying that let's ask for help. Let's go get to know about these helplines. There are measurements or measures that are being taken by banks and the legal authority that we have in India. But the best way is to reach out to them if something goes wrong. Because if we don't reach out to them, we never get help. So asking for help is the best solution that we can deal with these cyber attacks. And maybe we can save other people as well with that as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vandana. Thank you, Pawan. Thank you, Rajan. And thank you, Drupad, for that truly outstanding discourse on this topic. As I said, that I couldn't have asked for a better group of panelists to talk about it. Your knowledge, depth of expertise, and perspectives are truly unparalleled. I learned quite a lot, and I'm sure everybody who's watching this segment would have gone back very energized and enriched. I did think that many of us felt that cyber criminals are here, and therefore we are worried about the doomsday and the challenges and losing our money. But with the kind of things which I'm seeing happen in the industry by the regulator and also the general awareness around, I feel a lot more hopeful. As we heard today, that our cyber resilience of the banking system is better than what it was. Our ability to detect potential crime is also going to be better now than it's ever been. And we know what causes some of those crimes, and therefore we are better prepared. The helplines like 1930 and many other methods which you heard today are all available. The mantra of not staying silent and raising the voice, the mantra of asking for help because there is help available, I think will go a long way in us creating a highly, and I'm going to say the word trusted, not mistrusted, highly resilient and a better digital financial community. So with that, I once again thank you all, and I thank you Financial Express for bringing us all together on a topic which is so much more important for a country like India, which is going through this digital transformation journey and the economic growth through all of those interventions. So with that, I once again thank you all, and stay tuned for more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful session. Thank you.